Yeah. So that the whole premise of what we've been talking about ever since the beginning that we started these videos is no belief is true. And the basis in that claim or in that position, I guess, is that yeah, certainly might be true at a certain level. And if you're at that certain level, it could look very true. But then if you move to a different level, then it would not be necessarily true. So, for example, the phrase I love the phrase "what was once nectar is now poison, and what was once poison is now nectar." So there's plenty of things that you see, even in just in life. You go like, "Well, man, I never, ever, ever would wear something like that." And 20 years later, you're wearing something just like that, or vice versa. So I mean, it's a context thing. So whenever a context changes, then everything changes. That's different than. And I want to make sure that the first thing somebody might think when they hear that, they may go, "Oh, that's just rationalization. That's just relativism," and that's not where we're coming from. Where we're coming because there's the absolute truth that we know goes all the way through all of the levels of consciousness is that I'm here, I exist, and that's the only one that I've found that is all the way through. So and then there's ramifications that when we get higher levels of that scale of what does that mean? Okay, let's don't just say that's it, and that means there's no God, or that means there's no other, or whatever. Because once you get over that top level that we talked about, you hit that unity, you hit non-dualism, you hit all that stuff, and then all that stuff kind of falls into place, really.
Essentially, I was thinking about it today in preparation for this, and no belief is absolutely true, or at least it seems that, no belief is absolutely true. There may be a truth out there that is absolute, and as you say, in all likelihood, it pierces through all of those relative truths that we're talking about, and it's almost like the ground upon which these other smaller relative truths stand. It's awesome because you've already taken us through this wheel, right? The belief, emotion, thought, the BETs, and now we have a greater context to place them in with respect to the map that you gave us last week or last episode, which was these sort of levels of consciousness, the mountaintop, and the different paths that may lead to it. So now the next step is learning to navigate this terrain that you've mapped out for us, Greg.
The final episode, maybe there's plenty more, but in the order in which that I put those the slides, I get the pictures, diagrams. The rest of them are after that are all going to be variations and explanations that go kind of in between, and some of them are random. Some of them didn't fit in the belief conversation. But the conversation really comes together here, and this is different. Again, I told you that from anything that I've heard or seen or anybody mentioned, the belief cycle is not brand new. I mean, that's in cognitive therapy, that's probably in psychiatry, that's probably in a lot of different things. And then the levels of consciousness, that's been around for a couple thousand years, and Hawkins took it to the next level. So there's been some discussion about that. What there hasn't been that I found is the combination of these two together, these concepts, and how they're interrelated. So that's where I'd like to head now.
That sounds like a good plan.
We have that beliefs, emotions, and thoughts. Right. So we start at the top. We go and then the beliefs. This is based on 2 episodes ago. We talked about that the beliefs trigger. You have beliefs, and we talked all about beliefs and how the beliefs are formed and where they come from and how they get reinforced. The beliefs trigger emotions, and then the emotions foster the thoughts, and then you might have thousands and thousands of thoughts based on one belief. And then the next round is those thoughts end up almost certainly reinforcing the beliefs, because there's no reason not to. I mean, there's no reason to question your beliefs if you're believing your beliefs. So far, so good?
Yep, you bet.
All right. Now let's take a little bit closer look on what we can sort of like do about it, I guess. Beliefs right up there. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention, I thought about this earlier today when I was thinking about discussing this, is that many people have talked about the relationship of these beliefs, emotions, and thoughts. And most people actually get these backwards or get them reversed. I want to point this out because a lot of people think that you change your thoughts, then you'll change your beliefs. And I don't think that that's actually true at all. In fact, you can try to change your thoughts, but without questioning the thoughts, which we'll talk about today, you're not going to change the belief. You're only going to reinforce it. So even if you say I'm great, I'm powerful, or I'm outgoing, or any of that, if you don't question the underlying belief, then the belief's just going to stay there and it's going to bounce off. So when you have the thoughts, and they don't affect the belief until you question the belief itself. So a lot of people think that if you change your thoughts, then you'll. And now some people go backwards. They go, if I change my thoughts, then that'll change my emotions, and my emotions are what's driving me, and they don't even look at the beliefs. All right, so they don't even know that the beliefs are there that are driving the emotions. So if they say, well, just change your thoughts and be happy, just think happy thoughts, and then my emotions will be fine. That's not right either, because you're not going all the way around the circle, and you're certainly not even going in the right direction, at least from my perspective. So as you can see how that gets kind of twisted around a little bit, and in a lot of different ways to look at this. You can start anywhere here, but let's now start at the top and say, okay, we have our beliefs, and then those trigger some emotions, whatever that belief is. That belief could be in the ones that you grew up with, an iceberg that we talked about before. It could be anywhere in there. It could be an unconscious belief. It could be like a subconscious belief, or it could be a collective belief. It could be more like an opinion. It's going to trigger maybe some sort of an emotion. And normally when I say it triggers that, there's probably going to be some outside thing. It's going to be an event, or it's going to be somebody said something, or it's going to be usually something coming from the outside, the in quotes outside, that appears to trigger that emotion, that turning that belief into an emotion. All right. So normally, unless you're just sitting there thinking about it all day long and going around the circle all day long, somebody else come up to you and say something, and that'll be the catalyst. That'll be the catalyst that starts the emotion with the belief already in place.
Right. So
go ahead.
Yeah. So what you're saying essentially is right in line with, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, and all the Stoics,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You react to your opinions about the way things are, not the way things are.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
people tend to go, well, no, I'm angry not because I have a belief, but because this happened and this happened, and that's why I'm angry. And it's like, well, this thing that happened to you is neither good nor bad, but you have beliefs about it, and that's really what's triggering your emotions. Correct?
So the external event, and that's life. Life is going to throw external events at you all the time, and they're all they're going to either trigger or not trigger those beliefs. So when somebody says something of an opposite political party, that's gonna maybe trigger an emotion, and then you're gonna say, well, they're all wrong, and they're all stupid, and they don't know what they're talking about, because you're now defending your belief, and you're gonna get mad or angry or whatever that emotion is, and that'll trigger that belief. And it could go with a lot of different things. Mostly the negative ones. Remember, we talked about why would you question any of these beliefs for a positive emotion? And the answer is you probably wouldn't. So most of the emotions I'm talking about here are negative. Okay, so we get the negative emotions, and the world essentially is neutral. Events are all neutral. They're all just neutral catalysts. And when you put a catalyst in with some other kind of a compound, then it creates something that creates an activity, usually anger or something along those lines, jealousy or rage or something. So you go from emotions, and then the emotions foster those thoughts. You get one thought, and then you get more and more and more thoughts, and then the thoughts just reinforce the beliefs. That's pretty easy. I think an easy one to see. The more thoughts you have, the more you're just justifying your beliefs.
It's conditioning, right?
Yep, and it spins. That circle spins pretty quickly, and that circle can spin 1,000 times a minute if you're really in an emotional state. All right. So let's go off to the next level here. Is it, what if you question your belief right there where it says question your beliefs here? You start having some thoughts. You start having these thoughts, and they appear to reinforce your belief. But what if you said, is that true? Now, I think this approach from Byron Katie, and I certainly credit, because she's made a career out of this, a little bit of this questioning, and I'm going to take it to an entirely different level. So she'll just say, is it true about every single thought? Every single thought you have, you say, is that thought true? And then if you get in the habit of doing that, then that's the first crack in the dam, is getting used to doing that habit of questioning that belief. When you question that belief, some of the things are going to happen. You're going to start to think about, well, how would it feel without that belief? Would you have that emotion if you didn't have that belief? That's what I'm talking about. I'm going around the circle now in a clockwise fashion. would you have that emotion if you did not have the belief? And the answer most of the time is no. Sometimes you might go, yeah, and you might have to go around the circle a couple more times to figure that out, question other thoughts and other ways of hitting that belief. So the answer is, or I'm sorry, the question would be, would you even have the emotion if you didn't have that belief? And then if you didn't have that emotion, would you have more thoughts that reinforce a belief? So you're starting to put the brakes on this spiral here. So then you go into those thoughts, and the thought would be, if the clear the point that you can see, the most obvious thing is if you got a thought that contains a should or a shouldn't, or if the thought's a judgment of some sort, then you're just reinforcing the belief. You good there?
Yeah, it's Albert Ellis, I believe, founder of, I think, rational emotive behavioral therapy. I read one of his books once, and he talks about masturbating. He says, look out for masturbation. Don't masturbate. And it's like shoulding, oughting, all of these words that, we sprinkle into our vocabulary so freely. Yet these are critical signs that you are trying to impose your will upon the universe, basically. You're trying to say that things should happen this way, things should be this way. And it's like, you got it backwards, my friend. Anyways, excellent.
When you say should or shouldn't about anything, then you're fighting reality, because if it shouldn't, then it wouldn't. Or if it should, it would, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great. Carry on, sir.
All right. Now, you asked in 2 episodes ago, how do you know what those beliefs are? If they're collective, or if they're subconscious down there, or they're unconscious, you're down there, you're going like, how do you know? Now, Byron Katie's got a worksheet that she just lays out in front of you, and you can fill it out, and you can say, well, here's all these questions you can ask about yourself, about your beliefs, and that'll help you to uncover them. But another way to do that, in addition to that, or as a substitute for that, or maybe you don't have the worksheet available, is to take 30 seconds or maybe a minute, and whatever it is that you're thinking about, whatever the subject is, write everything down, a phrase, a word about that, or without judgment, and try to get as much down as you can. And hopefully it'll contain some should and shouldn't. But whatever you have an opinion about something, whenever you have a belief about something, whatever you have a thought about something, start writing, just jotting the words or the phrases down, and you just get them out as many as you can in 30 or 60 seconds. And that'll be pretty much your position on that. It could be whatever. It could be they should do this, and they always do this, or they never do that, or they think this, or they do that, or anything. You just write down whatever words you can come up with, or whatever phrases you can come up with, and that's pretty much going to be your belief system around that particular item. Now, you can do it for longer than a minute if you wanted to. If it's your spouse or your kid, you probably could go all afternoon and write different things about the subject matter. But if you're talking about something that you're arguing with over on the internet, or in some chat room, or on Facebook or something, if you're getting an argument about something, then just write down everything you think you know about it very quickly, and then you start to go through this. Is that true? And how do you know that's true? Or do you know that that's true? Are you absolutely certain that that's true? Because the source of much of what you say is just either because I grew up that way, or because my parents told me, or because my political party said so, or whatever it is. And you don't know absolutely unless you are that thing, or you are that person, or you are whatever it is you're talking about. You don't know everything there is to know about that thing. So then that's the dam starts to crack.
On a quick side note, I have to thank you for putting me on to Byron Katie, because I wasn't familiar with her until we started talking. So,
all right,
kudos. Good. That and my wife thanks you as well. We watched a couple of her videos a while back, and had a pretty good impact on us. It was pretty awesome.
They're awesome. They really are. Yeah. And the turnarounds are phenomenal, because when we do these, when you go around this circle, what you're doing with your beliefs is that you actually you're either ignoring, you're suppressing, or you're projecting, and usually all three, something about yourself, and you're projecting that out onto somebody else. And by questioning these beliefs, you're going to find that out, what's happening there. So, for example, in the public life, the person who's screaming most loudly that somebody else is lying, they're probably lying. Or if they're talking about if somebody's immoral or unjust, or if somebody is really, really projecting loudly and strongly either against another position, there's probably something about that could use some further inquiry. So we take a look at these beliefs, and then if we start to question these beliefs, and I do this now on a routine basis, every thought that I have, I question the thought, and then I go through the system and I go, well, how do I know that's true? Absolutely, without a doubt, do I know that's true? And then even if I'm coming back with a yes, then I'll come back with a, well, do I know that that's true at all levels? So this is based on what we talked about on the last video that we did together. Well, if I believe something is absolutely true, but somebody else believes it's absolutely false, clearly we're both coming from two different places on that consciousness scale. All right. So there are things that are on that scale that I once thought were absolutely true, and now there's things, the same things, I believe are absolutely not true, at least from my current perspective. So I can now understand why people at one level believe one thing and they think that that's true. And so I feel like I have a little bit more of a little bit of compassion for somebody who's taking an opposite view of what I have, the current view, so that my views are no longer beliefs. I certainly have preferences. Okay, so I might prefer one thing over another, but I don't know for the fact that it's true. And that's fine. And I'm cool with that. I'm cool with the fact that it's a preference. But it might be true for the other opposite might be true for you, but I have this other preference. And so I don't think necessarily that you're wrong. You probably are right for you. In fact, this perspective now allows me to understand that everybody thinks they're right. Everybody thinks they're right all the time. And it's because of this picture right here. They think they're right because they have these beliefs, and then those beliefs trigger the emotions, and the emotions foster the thoughts, which do nothing but reinforce their beliefs. So until a life event of some sort makes you question your beliefs, and that could be a health issue, that could be a money issue, that could be somebody dying, it could be, in other words, you could get cancer, you could have a near-death experience, you could have an NDE, you could something that really, really, really shakes your world. And then you start to go, whoa, maybe I wasn't all right, all correct, all knowing about that particular issue. And those are some I guess what you might say a little bit more. The universe is trying to tell you, hey, maybe your beliefs are not exactly what you believe, right? Are not all correct right at this moment. So.
Yeah, can I interject, because you not interject, but can I take it to another spot with respect to this topic?
Yeah.
Another thing that comes to mind for me is the fact that we tend to see in the world what our beliefs tell us. So not only does this wheel, reinforce the beliefs that you have, but you experience the world through the filter of your beliefs, and so there's this kind of confirmation bias that happens, whereby you interpret the world in a way that reaffirms what you already believe. And so I think that ties in with what you said. For people who are really rooted in this and who are really set in their ways, and they see what out in the world, what they have in their heart, sometimes it takes a really traumatic event to force them or to break them out of that spell just for a moment, just so long enough for them to see that there's this whole other field of possibilities that they didn't know even existed. And then once that happens, you're right, it's a crack in the dam, and that's oftentimes will convince us to question those beliefs or those thoughts. But when you're really stuck in this, I mean, we're talking about ways of breaking out of it, but when you're really stuck in it, you're not looking for a way out, right?
And you likely don't know that there is a way out. So the external, what appear to be external events that are slapping you in the head, they're actually, I heard it put one way is that when you're inside asleep and the wolf starts knocking on the door, at first the wolf knocks gently, and then the wolf starts knocking a little louder, and then the wolf starts smashing the door, and pretty soon the wolf just knocks the door, kicks the door in. And so that's the way life typically is with respect to those life-changing moments. There probably were some other less traumatic things that were indicators before that happened. And that's getting a little speculative, but my sense is that that's usually the case, or more often than not the case. What that does is that at least either temporarily or permanently breaks the cycle which is in the upper right-hand corner of this diagram, and that gives you new context. So when you have new context, now you look at it either from a zoomed out perspective. I like to use the word zoomed out because you have a greater perspective. You can see more things. You can see somebody else's point of view, for example, or you can have more information, or it feels like it's just larger. The perspective, the belief system that you have got questioned, and there may be, I mean, there always is, but there may, at this point you go like, there may be some things that I don't know. And so this is going to start to expand. It's going to get bigger. So now you're going to go through that, break the cycle, follow that little thing over there, and you got what's called new context up there. So now you're going to have to be zoomed out a little bit. You know, I see old Neil deGrasse Tyson on TV, you know, or whatever, and I go, that guy's pretty zoomed out. So if you're looking at everything from outer space, then the little petty things you worry about on a day-to-day basis are pretty inane or pretty innocuous. But if you're sitting there, I don't want to say wasting, but if you're burning a lot of mental capacity and emotional capacity surrounding all these beliefs, and there's actually more going on, and you're not aware of it, then there might be a better use of that energy, which may be zooming out and looking at it from a little bit higher up. So now we do the inquiry. Okay, this is one that's completely. I drew this, and it took me a few iterations, and it was a sketch at first, but this is called inquiry with intent. All right, so we had on that one thing of the levels of consciousness, the one we had a couple last episode, but a couple of slides ago, and it had the love and fear scale kind of on the left-hand side. But if you inquire with the intent of love, then you will come into your context with some curiosity. All right, see how that context is that's going to call your current context. So if we say that we're going to question a belief in our current context, which is in the red cloud, so that your red cloud is that filter that you're talking about. All right, yep. So that's your belief glasses. You could inquire with love, with the feeling of love, or you could call it curiosity, and say, well, gee, I don't know if I'm right about that or not. I don't know if my belief is true. That's a healthy way to go about it. It's a humble way to go about it. Or you could come at it from a feeling of fear, meaning that no, I am right, and I'll question my beliefs, and I'll reinforce my beliefs, and I'll find out that I'm right. So I'm going to go through my context here, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to go through that filter with righteousness, meaning like prove me wrong kind of a thing, as opposed to I don't know if I'm right or wrong or not, with the curiosity toward the top. See the difference there?
Yep.
All right. So let's go across the top one first. Is it true? And if you get no, then you're going to question your beliefs. And then that thing that right there, that little cycle is a version, just a little miniaturized version of the one we just looked at. You go through that cycle, and then if you get no, is it true? And you get no, then you'll pop out and you'll get some new context right there in that cloud, and you'll repeat it. But if you go through and you get a yes, is it true? A yes, and you reinforce your beliefs, then you're just going to go around that cycle, and you're never going to pop out, and you're going to have the same context, and you'll be stuck. I'm going across the bottom there.
Yep.
So and then you might go, yeah, well, is that true? Is that belief true in all cases? And is it true right now? And I know everything there is to know about that. And if the answer is yes, then you're going to be stuck. Now you could go back through that, and if the answer is yes, then there are some things you can do. Well, you can question some other beliefs about it and try to figure out if you're going to go back with a feeling of curiosity. You might be going like, well, you know, when you said that, like something like, I have this belief that she said something, and you go, well, did she say it? And you go, well, I heard her say that, so the answer is yeah. But if you go into it with a curiosity, and then you go into that, did she mean what you thought that you heard her say that? Yes, that's a true statement, because that's going to be what we call, you know, in the realm of current facts. And you go, now, did she mean exactly what you think that she meant? Now you start questioning it with a level of curiosity, and then you can start to break it down. So if you just go, well, that's what she said, and that's what she meant, and I know that's what she meant, so she's wrong and I'm right, then you're going to be stuck in your belief system. See the difference?
Yeah, to me, curiosity, righteousness, you could also say flexibility versus rigidity, you know, like when you go through it and you're very rigid, it's like you're looking at it from just one point of view. You're saying, well, no, that's it. That is what she said. I heard her say it. Whereas when you're coming at it with a more flexible perspective, you're like, well, that's what she said, but is that what she meant? And you're looking at different
No, all you have
factors,
to have
right?
the word curiosity there, and you have to have the word righteousness. That's the way it is. You're not gonna flex
Exactly. Well said. Yeah, no, it's very interesting. It's like the ability
you can
to,
put whatever word you want in there. I'm
yeah.
curious to figure out what other words you would put in there.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, it's the flexibility to look at it from different points of view, and that comes from being genuinely curious versus
Right.
paying lip service to curiosity just in the name of, oh yeah, I questioned my beliefs, I know they're true, right?
Well, you could put the word humility in there as well, because you are actually now coming from a position of humility, meaning I may not know everything, and I'm willing to find out more, and I'm willing to question my beliefs. First of all, anybody that's willing to question their beliefs, whether they're going to be collective beliefs or unconscious beliefs or any of those beliefs that are on the iceberg, anybody that's willing to question those things, they're already, in my book, they're already moving pretty far up that curiosity scale. Because most 90, I don't know what the percentage, I don't have a number, but the majority, the vast majority of humankind is not willing to even look at
Mhm.
their own beliefs.
Yeah, and yeah, it's, are you looking at them like, curiosity and righteousness are awesome too, because it's true. I mean, if you're curious, it means you're seeking the truth. Whereas if you're righteous, it means you're seeking to assert what you already believe or to
Yeah.
justify something that you're already doing. So yeah, it's the intent is the crux of the matter, I guess.
Yep. It is absolutely the intent. It's the intent. Even if you end up, and then Krishna way back when he says, look, even if you go down the wrong path and you believe all the wrong things, if your intent is truthful, then that counts. At least that counts in the karma department. So if you get led astray, and maybe this has a little bit to do with the 20-minute version you put on there about your story. I did send you a little thing about the belief systems there, and maybe people have to go through that in order to get to another level. I don't know. We're getting off track on that one. But if they're not going to question their beliefs in a curious way, or in a humble way, or in a loving way, then they're gonna stay there, until the pain becomes too great. And so then that's when then people start to question their beliefs, is when the pain becomes too great, or they have a life-changing episode, something along those lines. So people will cling to their beliefs. Let's take it one step further, out of fear, until it becomes so painful that they have to question those beliefs. They have to, because it becomes so painful, whatever that means, whether it becomes they went broke, or because their spouse left them, or because they got sick, or whatever it is, because it becomes too painful to continue to cling to those beliefs. Then that something can shake you loose and at least get you to question your beliefs. And then that's the first step in my view. That's the crack in the dam. But for most people, they would rather cling to something uncomfortable, because they like that more than they like the change or the possibility of the fact that their belief was wrong. So people will defend that belief, and they'll defend it to the death in many cases before they're willing to question that belief. Now let's go to the next slide. But you have the old context in the blue in the middle. All right, so you got the beliefs and the emotions and the thoughts, and you're in that circle in the middle, and you're just going round and round and round. And then you go into that little green arrow where it says beliefs, and it pops up to the next level of context. All right, so these are levels of context, and it's a little bit lighter blue. It's not quite as dark blue, but it's a little bit lighter blue. And then the arrow that's pointing at it says, in green, it says questioning beliefs. That equals free will, because you actually have the ability to question your own beliefs. And that's probably one really nice definition of free will, is questioning your beliefs. So you expand the level of context, and now we have one thing we haven't talked about a lot, is the thing called the Course in Miracles. I don't know if you're familiar with the Course in Miracles.
I haven't read it or done it, but
Okay.
yeah, I've heard lots about it.
Okay, so that is actually my interpretation of what that the levels are. They can call those miracles. They're actually in the Course in Miracles. Every act of forgiving is a miracle, and it has a continuously ever expanding power as you do that. And you go through, and it actually has you question that nothing I believe is true. It's it kind of goes through there, but every time that you question something, the corollary to that is that if you think that somebody else was wrong, and now you know that they're not necessarily wrong, they just have an opposing belief, then you have the ability at this point to at least entertain the idea of forgiveness. So that's that the whole Course in Miracles is all about forgiveness. So that's kind of what I just kind of threw in there is that when you do this, when you question your beliefs, you can't help but take a questioning a belief that's opposite of somebody else or something else, because you have a belief, and a belief is nothing more than a position. And in order for a belief to be there, it's probably believing in it against something else or in contrast to something else. You with me on that?
Yeah, absolutely. These things complete each other and define each other too, right? I mean, one person's bad guy is another person's hero, and without both, you wouldn't have the other. It's just the way it is.
Yep. So if you got these two beliefs, and you got this belief over here, and then you know that you're right and they're wrong, but then you question the belief altogether, you're actually moving up a level in that, and you go, well, I can see how somebody might believe that, and I can see how somebody might believe the other, and now I can see more clearly. I can see zoomed out. I can see from a higher level. I can see from one level out on this diagram, and now I have a new context. See how it's kind of coming together?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so now you go to the next level out, and then the medium blue turns a little bit lighter blue, and then the lighter blue turns even lighter, and then now you're in a completely different context, and now nothing that you used to believe is true, and everything that you used to believe is now false, or at least no longer true from your current perspective, and so what was once nectar is now poison. Here's just a pop culture example, is that we all have movies. I'm a little bit older than you, but the movie Terminator and Terminator 2 and Terminator 3 with Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know those movies?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I sit my kids down not too long ago. I don't want to say not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago, and the Terminator was on. Maybe it was on Netflix or something like that, and we're flipping through there. The original Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger was like maybe 30 years old or something. He was still Mr. Universe. So the Terminator guy, I go, oh, this is such a great movie. Let's sit down, let's watch this. And my kid, and this is what everybody's always been talking about. So we're 10 minutes into it, and I'm going like, this is awful. this is. I got to the place where he said, I'll be back, and then I was going like, well, he's already killed 48 people. It's nothing but a slaughter. And he's nothing but just coming in there and just killing people with a machine gun. And I'm going like, where's the entertainment in this? I mean, and I just looked at it from, I probably was in the movie theater when I was a teenager going like, yeah, it's so cool. And you come out and, you say, I'll be back. And you say that for 20 years. And now I'm going like, man, that is a violent movie. I don't know what the body count is coming out of that, but it's just a slaughter. It's just a movie. It's nothing but slaughter. So that's just a pop culture example of what I used to like, and now I certainly don't like anymore. But that's one easy example. There's a whole lot of other harder examples. Some of them have to do with your collective, back to the iceberg, your collective beliefs, what you grew up with your family, what your family said is right, and we're the right kind of people, and they're the wrong kind of people. Those are much, much harder than looking at a movie and going like, I don't like that movie anymore. So this is not an easy process for a lot of people.
Well, and even the pop culture reference that you threw out there, I have similar things in my life that I feel conflicted about to some extent, like certain genres of music that I grew up listening to and that I still, part of me still enjoys, but then another part of me is like, yeah, that's pretty stupid. Like really shouldn't I shouldn't really enjoy this, but part of me still enjoys it. But when you get into the really deep rooted stuff, right? I mean, it's easy for me to see that my love of rap music is not congruent with my beliefs and my principles. But when you're dealing with stuff that's deep rooted, like your entire, family history or your culture, it becomes a lot harder to see that.
Yeah. And in my own personal experiences, I have similar experience with the music that I used to listen to. I can listen to it on occasion, and I can tolerate it, but I don't seek it out anymore. And maybe a time in the future where I won't listen to it at all. But yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that is you look at it and that's kind of questionable. Maybe that is not is absolutely horrid, but I don't. And now when it comes on, it doesn't bother me, but I'm not going to go cranking it up and jam and start dancing. So it's like, yeah, I used to like that. More of a nostalgia. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I get exactly the same. It's like I'll go for weeks and weeks without listening to it, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna I'm gonna indulge in my bad habit, listen to some music that's questionable. But to me, I think the important thing is how much harm are you doing by listening to this music? How much harm was done by creating it? A lot of it is just acting in some cases, like, and same with the movies, right? I mean, it's just make believe. It definitely does sort of create low vibrations, though. I mean, or whatever you want to call it. It's a low level of consciousness. It's very primal.
Yes, I think we're saying the same thing. And now I do listen to music that I never ever would have. I listen to a lot more classical music than I ever did before.
Yeah.
But I know that those are timeless, and I know that those can have a calming influence on me now, as opposed to listening to the stuff I used to.
I guess what we're talking about now is the symptoms of context change, right?
Well, it is, and so that it's not a desire to listen to a different kind of music. It's just that it falls away. The old music falls away, and you find the new, and it just appears. And it's that way with everything. It's all the context, and all the context changes, and then you figure you're not hanging out with the people you used to hang out with anymore.
That's what I was going to go to. Yeah, I definitely, yeah, definitely a symptom.
That's a symptom, but here's what happens is that, one day you wake up and you go, you know what, I haven't seen that neighbor of mine since last 4th of July party, or the last Christmas party, and
Right.
Whereas we used to hang out all the time. That's what happened. You kind of drift apart that way, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. So.
Certainly not, but I think it's something that people should be aware of as they embark on this journey. If they embark on it, I mean, just be aware. You might lose some friends. You might not like the same things that you used to. So
I think it can be a very lonely journey for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on this picture, the diagram, it's not a picture, but a diagram, there's a couple other things here we need to be kind of looking at before we move on. One is that so now we've got the little green arrows, and those green arrows are taking us to higher and higher levels of context, right? So then the beliefs end up in your new beliefs. And I say new beliefs because for a while, you're going to be adding new beliefs or substituting new beliefs for the old beliefs, all right? This has been my experience and my observation is that you're actually going to be replacing beliefs. So if you question a belief, and you're not kind of paying attention, you're just going to put a new belief in there, maybe a better belief, or maybe a higher one, or maybe one that's a little bit nicer to everyone else, or maybe one that's more loving, and maybe it's one that's in a higher calibration, or whatever you want to call it. And that's actually not a bad thing, I think, at first. When you dig out of and we'll talk about it when we get to a later slide, is that when you start moving up and you're going to add more beliefs, that's okay to a certain point, and then you're going to be questioning those beliefs, and at some point you're just going to end up dropping more and more beliefs, and then you're kind of moving into that well, maybe nothing that I'm believing is true, but now they turn into preferences right there up in the upper right hand corner of this diagram, right under where it says new beliefs in a new context. After a certain point, beliefs turn into preferences. We've said that a few times, right? Now you go down to the bottom right hand corner, those emotions that you used to have, those outbreaks of anger, those outbreaks of righteousness or jealousy or hatred or whatever those really negative connotative kinds of emotions have been, now they're going to be more into experiencing. You're not going to be living those emotions as much. Now there is a downside to this, is because people have told me, as I've kind of zoomed out, they're looking at me like, man, you're a lot more emotionless. You're a lot less emotional, I guess. And they're like, well, aren't you upset about that? No, that just doesn't upset me anymore.
Well, it's a similar thing with me. I think we may have had similar temperaments in the past, but for me, my anger, my arrogance, my combativeness, and all these different things were so pivotal and such foundational parts of who I was, that when those things started to, and not to say that they're gone entirely, they're still a part of me, but when I started to get a handle on those things and they became less pronounced, you're seeing a lot less of those emotions, not more joy, more bliss, more love, but a lot less of the emotions that used to define you. So yeah, it
Okay.
seems to them like you're emotionless, right?
Yeah. Well, it looks that way to other people, and point blank, people have said that to me.
Wow.
But, yeah. And you made a good point. Is it actually allows some of those positive emotions? And we've talked all along about if you have a belief that's giving you positive result or positive feedback, or there's not really a whole lot of reason to question those positive ones, at least not at first. And so that it allows more room down there in the lower right hand corner of this diagram, more room for those positive emotions, more room for the love, more room for the joy, more room for the compassion, more room for the empathy. And that just is it's a natural outgrowth of what's happening. It's all there. It's all inside. As you continue to climb in levels of consciousness, or as you continue to zoom out in zooming out from your old context, then those emotions are much more prevalent, and they're much more available, and they show up a whole lot more. So now you go over to the left-hand side, and we're swinging around over there, and those thoughts that you had a lot, now that kind of turns more into witnessing. So you do have thoughts, and they come and go, but you're no longer attached to them, and you're no longer giving them any energy that's trying to justify some sort of a belief. Right before, really almost I don't know if it's the purpose of those thoughts was to reinforce the belief. That might actually be true. That the purpose of the thoughts is just to make sure that belief stays in place. But if because I never thought of it that way, I was kind of questioning that at the same time I said it. But that sounds like it might have some level of validity. But the thoughts are actually potentially the purpose of those thoughts is to reinforce and keep those beliefs in place. But now the thoughts that come are less intense, they're less often, and now you just kind of watch them come and go, and it's a whole lot easier not to get attached to them or to give them any energy. And this is, whether you try to meditate on purpose, that's actually where meditation is trying to go. Meditation is trying to do this without undoing the beliefs. So you're trying to suppress your thoughts over here on the left-hand side with meditation. If you don't do it in my view, meditation can be nothing but very, very frustrating if you don't take all this other into consideration. If you just sit there and try to quiet your mind, maybe you can, and maybe you get good at it for an hour or 2 hours a day or 2 hours twice a day. But then when you end up, your mind just goes right smack back into your loop or your spiral, then all you've really done is just put a Band-Aid on it. So if you can't question those beliefs at the same time, now meditation kind of makes a little bit of sense. You just sit there and you watch those thoughts come in, and now you give them no energy, and then they dissipate. And pretty soon they stop coming around because they don't have any reason to be there really.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah. And, I've heard different things about, well, first of all, there are different types of meditation.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with all the different types, but, I've heard certain people say, like, the point is not to have no thoughts. It's to, like you said, watch those thoughts go by, almost like visualize them like leaves on a river, and you're standing on a bridge over the river and you're watching them go. So when they present themselves, you don't try to move them. You just let them carry on, right? So I think doing that is kind of what you're describing. It's watching your thoughts instead of trying to suppress them or whatever. But I think experiencing a state of mental silence for some people might be the first crack in that dam that you're talking about. Because I don't know about you, but my voice, it goes on and on and on. Like, so for some people, that might be the first time they've experienced a state of mental silence, and that can be the break that you need to interject and start questioning those thoughts.
I got this mental image that the voice inside your head is like a roommate you can't get rid of.
Wow, so you make them your friend, right? And you get them to work on stuff while you're busy doing other things. You're like, okay, you're going to talk about some useful things. Read me some Marcus Aurelius quotes, Contemplate the oneness of all things. If you're going to talk about the good stuff.
Well, if you're going to be talking to me, you might as well be useful.
Preach, baby. That's what I tell them. I'm like, listen, we're stuck together. You're chatty. I'm okay with that as long as you talk about stuff I want to hear.
I love that.
As soon as it turns to, complaining and stuff, I'm like, hey, that's not part of the deal.
Right. Hey, let's pick up another book.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I did that for, I don't know, 25 or 30 years. I was immersed in the self-help world. So I probably was doing exactly that. is trying to overpower it with keeping. I don't know. Maybe I don't know that I was said. Well, I'm going to try to keep my voice quiet or try to tame my voice in my head. But I was definitely trying to. I was definitely trying to add new beliefs. That's no
Yeah.
doubt about
And
that.
it's interesting, actually. Byron Katie, one of the videos I watched of her, she said something that really struck a chord for me. And she said, when you figure out what the mind is and it realizes what it is, it wants a place for itself. So it stops being your enemy and it becomes actually a very powerful ally. And I've always felt that way. I always feel like, some people want to kill the ego, they want to silence the mind, and I'm like, it's a miraculous tool that was given to you by nature. And I think for me, the goal is to learn how to work with it and not use it, but make it your friend and make it your ally instead of having it constantly, chitter chatter about useless things that just get you angry or get you upset, right? I mean, I don't know. That's just my approach, anyways. I don't know.
No, I love that because it's a phenomenal tool, and the challenge is if you're not doing some of these other things, whether you question your beliefs or meditation or whatever it is, or doing some sort of read Marcus Aurelius. If you're not doing something with it, then it'll be in charge like an unruly dog.
Yeah.
Dog's a great pet if it's well trained, but if it's not, it can be a major pain in the ass.
Yeah, and on that topic, I just wanted to say, when you talk about questioning your thoughts, that's a form of thought in itself, isn't it?
Yes, and it's trying to take that tool and turn it upon itself. So yes, it
Bingo.
is.
Yes, and exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. So, it's almost like there are two types of thoughts, right? There are some that are automatic that rise up to the surface without your consent or permission. And then when you concentrate or deliberately try, you can produce thoughts that are actually quote unquote your own.
Oh yeah, the functional thought. I call that functional thought.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
functional thought is probably 5% of the thought, and it's very useful. And that's that functional thought is actually, it created the Industrial Revolution, it created the internet, and it created every single thing we have. So that's good.
And that's how you question those automatic thoughts is through functional thought, right? So yeah, it's beautiful because you are turning the mind against itself, and that's how it realizes, oh shit, maybe I should stop doing that, and maybe I should just play the game now, be an ally.
You're taking the 5% of your thoughts and trying to, question the other 95% of what's going on in there.
Wow. Well put. That really truly shows the sort of scale of the task at hand and why it's an ongoing process.
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah. But my experience is that, and observation is that the more you question the beliefs, the less the emotions that you have and the fewer thoughts that you have. So that cycle slows down. That belief, emotion, and thought cycle, the BETs, that slows down. And it doesn't stop, but when it does slow down, then you can just let some of those go by, and you don't have to give them any energy, and they don't continue to reinforce one another. They don't continue to propagate. So here it is, the next slide, transcending.
The moment we've been waiting for.
This is where we've been coming to the whole time, because nobody that I have seen or read or heard about has actually taken those two concepts together and said, okay, well, by doing this, by questioning each and every belief, then you can actually move upward in this scale. Now, there's the three different levels. So there's gradations in between and that, and we talked about what the red line is and what the yellow line is and what the blue line is. And I talked a little bit about it as we opened up this session here. And at first, you're adding new beliefs. That is the entire self-help world right there. I mean, that is, you go in the self-help section of the former bookstore, and you look around, and I got 1,000 books right that are in that section right there, that are either on my bookshelf or on my Kindle. That probably more than that, but that you take something that you were doing in the emotional context and you try to apply a logic to it. This is the how-to world right here. Anything that starts with a how-to just about is going to be in this category right here. Because what you're doing is you're taking somebody else's belief, a how, you're taking their belief that worked for them, and you're substituting that for something that you were doing before. But here, so we're in this adding new beliefs, and we're substituting these new beliefs, these how-tos, into the the way I was doing things before, which probably were not working. And in here, there are some phenomenal books. There's the Law of Success. There's Napoleon Hill that's in there. There's How to Make Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie's in here. And you got the Success Principles from Jack Canfield, which is a little bit more modern take on the Law of Success. So many of these things are right in there, and they work. They work to get you from that bottom level up to that middle level. That's my experience, and that's my observation is that they do work. Now there are some that are garbage and that don't work, and those are people who are just trying to steal your money. So there are some. I'm not contradicting what I said before, that maybe their way of making money was to sell books that don't work. I don't know, but they're probably taking advantage of the folks down low. There's a whole business of taking advantage of people down below the red line, and that's going to be payday lending. That's going to be lottery. There's a whole bunch of people that know how this stuff works, and they target people down below that line, and they get very successful doing it. Not very integrous in my book, but that's what happens. But there are people who are integrous who really want you to get above that red line, so they got the how-to books. But that's adding the new beliefs. Now, the next thing that ends up happening is you start bumping up against the yellow line. I've told you that that I've used that terminology before when we've been talking. You start bumping up against that yellow line, and logic starts to no longer work. When the brain, this has happened to me, is that your brain, which I thought for a significant portion of my life was my greatest asset, starts to become my greatest liability if I'm going to keep going. And that's I think, a pretty profound statement, because logic is no longer working for me, at least not to the extent. Because I was very, very goal oriented, man. I tell you what, the people will say, write down your goals and you'll achieve them. And guess what? I did. But what they didn't tell you is, and then you move the goals, and then you move the goals, and then you move the goals. You do achieve the goals. You get a lot of stuff. You get to do a lot of cool things. You get a lot of it's no longer what you have, but then it's what you do, and you get to experience things. You say, I want to go here. On my list was go into all these different countries, and I got to go to a lot of different countries. Probably 85% of what I had on my to-do list and my goal list, going back all the way to 1989, I've achieved something like that, and or some version of it. I've seen it, or I've achieved it, or I've obtained it, or got it, or whatever. Now I'm starting to bump up. Okay, now what? I mean, there's only so much for me personally. I mean, there's only so many things I can get, and the happiness or the joy or the pride or all those things that are just not sticking. So now you're bumping up against that yellow line there, and now this is when questioning your old beliefs is the new ones that you got when you crossed over the red line. Now you're starting to question your beliefs, and now your whole world starts to change, and it's a paradigm shift. All right, now there's a paradigm shift, and now you start to see that, well, maybe it's not all cause and effect. Maybe it's not all logic. Maybe it's not all what I thought it was. And now your world really starts, and then this thing starts to zoom out a lot faster, at least for me. Now, I didn't have I had one life-changing event, but it didn't happen all at once. So I was on top of the world financially, at least by almost anybody's expectations. And then the crash of '08 happened, and I got caught in the downswell of that. And that had me to question. So it was an event that actually made me cause to question some of those events. Not like a near-death experience, because it was slow and over a period of time. Not like somebody leaving me, or not like somebody dying, something along those lines. But I did have, I guess, a catalyst to get me to start questioning some of those beliefs. And I start crossing into that territory where I'm questioning all my beliefs, and it's been a significant difference. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, lots of thoughts on that.
You had your cubicle epiphany, which probably, this is my observation, or this is what I think might have happened. Your cubicle epiphany, it may have shot you well past the yellow line, and then maybe either lingered there, or maybe slid back, or maybe you're still kind of right above there. But that was your catalyst. That's kind of what I'm getting from a lot of the videos that I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I even said it, I think one of the first videos I ever recorded, I even said the reason that this event was so profound for me was that it caused me to question everything I thought I knew.
Yeah.
Point blank. That was the start, right? And whether it launched me into the, yellow or green or wherever. I mean, it just, it showed me that there was much more to life and to the experience of being a human being than I had ever imagined. That's exactly what it led me to do, was to question everything.
Yeah.
Just everything. What is success? What is love? What is beauty? What is everything? What is truth? And when you start doing that, yeah, boy, the context changes, life, reality changes, and it doesn't change, but it changes your perspective of it, and everything changes as a result. It's incredible.
Yeah, Wayne Dyer had a quote that he liked to say is nothing's changed, but everything's different. Or maybe he said nothing's different, but everything's changed. I can't remember the way he put it, but I know what he was talking about. I mean, you wake up and you're in the same house and you go into the same job, but you go and look around, going like, holy smokes, kind of a Truman, the Truman Show kind of a moment.
Totally.
When a lot of that stuff starts to happen.
I've been exploring this landscape ever since. I've been up and down, left and right.
Sure.
Sometimes deliberately, other times not. And
right.
But I think that, at the end of the day, you are the emotional context, you are the logical, and even if you haven't crossed that yellow line, you still are a spiritual being, and you still exist in that dimension. You just haven't, explored that dimension yet. You haven't really made your home there yet. So,
but what I wanted to get at is that the people that are below the red line may not actually have the inclination to question those beliefs. And like I've shown there is, if you question your beliefs and you add new beliefs, that was me. That was the way I was wired. I came into this world that way. So I don't know if that's the same case for everybody. That's kind of what I'm getting at, and that's okay. I mean, if somebody doesn't want to question their beliefs, that's all right. And I can see where you were. I'm sorry. I can empathize where you are, because that's where I was. And if because it was a time when I was happy. I was happy with my strong beliefs until they became too painful mentally, and I had to start questioning them.
So, Greg, what's this lantern of divinity on the left? What does that represent?
I think that we can call that consciousness itself. Is that this is all happening. That there's the example would be is there is no sound without the silence behind it. There is no there's not, you can't hear things, you can't hear notes if there's not a context for which the sound to be against. So that's what that is. It's essentially all the levels of consciousness put together. You could call that God, but I don't think that God actually is probably the proper word for that. But it is that lantern of divinity is what is the energy that goes through, or the spirit that goes through all of those levels, and that's what makes all these things possible. That's what makes this realm possible. That's what makes Earth possible, to be able to come here and experience all these different levels that I've got laid out here. So it's an abstract concept, but I put it on there because I don't know why I put it on there, because it felt like it needed to be, maybe.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it's like, all of these levels of consciousness, consciousness emanates from the lantern in a way, right? It's almost like the light that comes from the lantern is consciousness, and that's what we're
thank you for reminding me. Remember a couple of slides ago we had the spotlights of the focus. That's kind of what the analogy, and then you have the lantern that lights this whole entire thing up. Yeah. So those spotlights were like flashlights, and this is more like a big lantern that lights everything up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, it's cool. Again, all symbols and metaphors. I mean, you're always going to be sort of modeling, and you're not. There's no way to capture the true essence of what it is in words and symbols. But as far as symbols go, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. And then above the blue line, we mentioned it before. That's when you hit non-duality. That's when everything kind of comes together. That's the big I, and that's if there's just the I, and then everything becomes one. That's the perceiver, the perceived, and the perception. They all come together, and you can call that God. If you go back one slide, and you say that if you go out and out and out, and you pretty soon there's not going to be any more context. If you take this to its logical end, right? Well, then what? Then everything just is.
Yeah.
Right? And then what is that? That's just whatever's here, and then it's the substrate of everything. And some people call that God, or some people call that life or nature. Aurelius called it nature. I thought it was pretty funny. He almost comically avoided the word God when he just kept using the word nature. But that's what he was talking about.
Yeah, the logos is another way, another concept, like the sort of mind, right? The cosmic mind that sort of puts everything together, and yeah, the laws of
So,
nature, right? I mean, it's an apt metaphor.
yeah. So if we didn't have any beliefs at all, then would we even be here? It's kind of an existential question. But if we didn't have any beliefs at all, would we just be the drop of water that goes back into the ocean, kind of a thing? And yeah, maybe. Maybe that's where this thing's headed. Maybe once you are stripped of any beliefs, maybe then you just go back into the big, back into the big whatever it is, big energy field. Or because I'm not convinced that when you die that's the end, because you can't kill energy, and you can't kill I guess matter. Matter just changes form, and then you can't kill life. That's pretty much where we're headed with the next level of science.
Hmm.
But that's the next frontier.
Yeah, yeah, and ultimately, I mean, as as long as this works for you,
Yeah.
then it really, whether science eventually validates it or not, or whether it contradicts it or not, doesn't really make a difference.
Okay. Yeah. Let's get down this right before as we wrap this up. Is okay. So what? Why does this matter? Why is this? Why are we even talking about this? Because there's not really a something to obtain by it. Because most of the spiritual marketplace out there. That's Jed McKenna. That's his word. He calls it the spiritual marketplace. Is out there trying to sell you something. When I say sell, I'm going to put it in air quotes and sell you whatever. Not just the book that they're selling, but they're trying to sell you that you're going to get something. You're not getting anything out of this. It is what it is. You're not going to get happier. You're not going to get rid of those are all byproducts maybe, but you're not. I mean, you're still going to have to wake up, and you're still going to have to carry wood and chop water.
Yeah, exactly.
And for some people, it's disappointing. I think the further along you go, because you don't have these beliefs that were energizing anymore. So there is probably a period of disillusionment about like, is this all there is? You
Hmm.
probably go through that and go like, well, what? Ajishanti says, I wouldn't wish this on anybody.
Yeah, he calls it a destructive process, right?
Right.
Yeah,
But I thought that was pretty cool because he calls it melting from the inside, melting from the center.
yeah.
And if you look at the picture that I had on that old context one with the concentric circles, if you're
Hmm.
actually eliminating those old beliefs and that old BET, and you continue to go, that's kind of what he's talking about. You're
Yeah.
actually moving the layers of the onion from the inside. He calls it melting from the inside, so that there's very little left of the original person that was there. There's just a shell of that individual, and it's a very transparent shell. You look at somebody, you can see through their eyes, and they got the look, and they're not caught up in their beliefs, and they just sit there and smile, and they look like they're need to go off into an insane asylum. So,
Yeah, it's the cost of sanity, right? In an insane world, you're gonna be alienated. People are gonna think you're weird. They're gonna think you're a fool. It's like, yeah, all right, good times.
Jed, I don't know if you've read any Jed McKenna. I like him. I'm not like a worshiper of anything, but he puts it in a different perspective. He said he's got one phrase pretty cool. He says, "I used to wear a gown in this crazy ward, but now I just wear a visitor's badge."
Yes, nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to be you're a visitor for the rest of your life at least,
Yeah.
as far as we can tell. But yeah, it's kind of interesting too, in terms of what happens, to consciousness and energy and matter after it transforms. There's, yeah, I don't know about you. I can't remember when this started. Like, I don't remember the start. To me, it's always been happening. My experience of life as this human named Ollie, as far as I can tell, there was never a time where I wasn't Ollie. And so, it kind of makes you wonder. You were having an experience, or there was an experience taking place before, but you don't remember it, and you don't remember when your experience started. So, is there even really a line between my experience and your experience, or my experience and the experience of being soil for a couple thousand years before a plant, absorbs some part? You know what I mean? Like, is it even worth talking about? Because if it's just one consciousness, really, I have the feeling that I am this one body right now, but I don't remember when that started, and I probably won't notice when it ends.
Come on, Ollie, you don't remember when you were soil?
Well, you know, the mineral consciousness, the plant, the animal, and then there's this crazy thing called a human that, you know, for whatever reason falls out of alignment with the whole, and then, you know, goes through all this unnecessary suffering on the way back. But, you know, it makes you wonder, like, really, what's the demarcation between this experience and just the experience?
Yeah, that's another part of the dream, maybe. I don't know.
Well, and I like that you called it, I think in the last graph of the last episode, I think you were calling them localizations. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess that's my understanding or my interpretation, or that's the way
Yeah.
it looks to me.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of whirlpools in a river, right? But really, the whirlpools are the river. They're, you know,
Right.
you're a localization of consciousness, but you are the whole consciousness. You're not just this localization. So,
So you can point to a whirlpool and you can see it, but it really doesn't exist.
correct.
Yeah. No, that's we're saying the kind of it's a localization of that energy,
That's right.
and there's other things that are pushing it, and there's probably an obstacle up here, and it's doing this, but it's not. It doesn't exist independently of its own.
Right. But
It's just
we think it does, right? When we talk about the whirlpool or like the wave, right? Alan Watts talks about it. You know, what does he say? The wave is to the ocean what you are to the universe, right? Like you're the universe peopling or whatever, right? So it's like, you know, when
yeah.
that wave hits the shore, it just goes back to being the ocean. There's no loss there.
I think the whirlpool is even easier to comprehend because it stays there. You can just sit there and watch it.
Very true.
If
Yeah.
the river rises, it'll go away. Or if the river goes down, it'll go away based on the currents and all that. I mean, a
Yeah.
wave it seems a whole lot more temporary, but even the concept of the whirlpool is that's a localization of that water and that energy right there, and that's kind of what we are.
Yeah, and when things flow by, they get sucked into the whirlpool, right? So it's, you know, it's a good metaphor, but yeah, I mean, it's just the river. So that's what we are, I
The river,
suppose. Yeah.
yeah, it's the river.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I've never really seen anybody talk about how to move up the levels if you want to or if you're so inclined, but or the effect. I mean, it's still kind of cause and effect, but the questioning of the the, the beliefs that will facilitate whatever it is that's going on there. I think.
Yeah, I've never seen it put together like this. The way what it makes me think of is like you kind of you're almost coming up with a grand unified theory of spirituality in a way. You're combining all the things that other people have brought up in different contexts, and you're putting it all together into a
It
big.
sounds like a mighty big title there. I don't.
Well,
Not,
you know what I mean. I don't know. You know what I'm saying. You know, there's lots of books about the ego. There's lots of books about,
right.
you know, all these different things, but nobody's ever really put it all together. Or if they have, you know, maybe they haven't
It's a
done such a good job.
synthesization of a lot of different angles. Yes,
Exactly. Yeah.
there is a lot of that. Yeah.
But I think it's good because like all of these things are connected, and so you can't really attack one thing without dealing with the whole. So awesome. All right. Well, send me those slides, and we'll do some more.
We'll keep it rolling.
Absolutely, man. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you again for all those videos that you make. Thank you for all the things you're doing because that's cool. I like that. I like what you're doing. And I appreciate you doing these videos too. These videos.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure, man. These are, yeah, absolutely. I love doing this stuff, and I hope we keep it going, man.
All right, sounds good. Have a good evening.
You as well. Cheers.
See you.